half of all U.S. deaths from tropical systems are due to storm surge. Storm surge can travel miles inland, destroying structures in its path. This is why you need to evacuate if told to do so. Just a few inches of water in your home can knock out the power. Water rises, furniture, and other objects begin to float. 3 feet of water will force you to look for higher ground. This may be a second floor or maybe even an attic. But if the water rises to 6 feet, this is definitely a life-threatening situation. The water would be above my head, and sharp, dangerous objects, electrically charged objects, could be floating around in the water. Water levels up to 9 feet would be all the way up to the ceiling in most homes. This is why you must listen to local officials and evacuate when told to do so.
You often hear us talk about categories of hurricanes, and it's the wind speed along the Saffir-Simpson scale that dictates what the category is with each storm. And we can predict what kind of damage will be done based on how strong the winds will be. Okay, let's start with a Category 1 storm. Now, from a Category 1, the storm damage is fairly minimal. Some shingles will come off the homes and the trees will begin to bend, but again, it's fairly minimal. Now, with the Category 2 winds, the damage will be more extensive. Siding can be pulled away from the home, flying debris can break the windows, and the trees, as you see, significantly bend over. Now, with a Category 3 storm, it can cause the door of a house to blow in because the winds are so strong. The roof will likely begin to flap up and down, as you can see, and the winds will blow, the trees will begin to fall. Category 4 storm will cause even worse damage. Most of the trees will begin to fall, almost all the windows will break, and most of the shingles on the roof will fly away. Now, once you get to a Category 5, you have catastrophic damage. The shingles are completely gone, holes form in the roof, the walls begin to fall, and there are no trees left standing whatsoever. Now, of course, we know there are many more hazards when it comes to tropical systems, but this shows you what kind of damage to expect from just the wind alone.
Always remember the slogan, turn around, don't drown. More people die during flooding in a hurricane by driving their car into a flooded road than any other way. If you're driving along and you see water on the road, just stop, go back the way you came. 6 inches of water can make you lose control of your car, and less than 2 feet can sweep that car off the road. Once your car is swept off the road, your chances of being rescued are fairly slim. Let's talk about bigger vehicles too. Maybe you think since you have an SUV, you have more clearance. You can make it through that water. Well, it's still the same 2 feet that can wash away an SUV as well.
It's important to seek shelter whenever damaging winds strike. Wind gusts of over 80 miles per hour can knock down trees, sending cars flying and debris all throughout the air. The damage that these strong winds create, paired with real-time dual-pole radar data, help meteorologists determine which weather phenomena has occurred. Tornado winds are in a twisting counterclockwise pattern at speeds of 70 to upwards of 300 miles per hour. The twisting motion of tornado winds leaves behind a trail of debris in a circle like this. Microbursts leave behind a similar level of destruction. These often occur in the summer months, and with wind speeds of over 100 miles per hour, many people confuse them with tornadoes. But the winds, they're not twisting. Instead, an updraft weakens, and the thunderstorm sends the core and all the rain plummeting to the ground. The debris spreads out in all directions once it hits the ground. Here's the difference. The debris field has the base of the trees all pointed in where the microburst originated. Whether the winds are twisting, straight, or spreading in all directions, all types of severe storms should be taken seriously to protect yourself and your family.
Because of climate change, tropical systems are producing more rain, moving slower and lasting longer over land. Meteorologist Kat Campbell explains the science behind why this is happening.
As temperatures rise, warmer air molecules carry around more water vapor, causing more potential rainfall, and this increases the chances of inland flooding. Our poles are also getting warmer. The pressure differences between the poles and tropical systems are now smaller, slowing down the steering currents that push these tropical systems along. A recent study shows that tropical systems have slowed down by 10% in the past 75 years. Another study shows that tropical systems are lasting longer over land. 50 years ago, a tropical system would have lost 3/4 of its intensity in the first 24 hours of landfall. Now, it would only lose about half.
Those changes are putting more North Carolinians at risk. Strong winds fueled by climate change are moving farther inland, and the annual chance of hurricane-force winds is increasing, with risk areas expected to continue expanding west of Raleigh. New flood risk calculations from researchers are also much higher than government estimates, with nearly twice as many properties now at risk from what experts call a 100-year flood. More than 30 counties in the state are projected to see more than a 20% increase in flood risk in the coming decades, including Washington, North Carolina, where floods could be more than 600% more likely by 2050. According to a recent UNC study, for every residence that is removed from a floodplain in North Carolina through a government buyout, 10 new residences are built in those high-risk areas. Development that could be dangerous.
Tornadoes are one of nature's most destructive forces, often producing catastrophic damage in a matter of seconds. Tornadoes are born from rotating thunderstorms. You can see the rotation here at the base. The next step is a funnel cloud that begins to form. The National Weather Service issued a tornado warning, and now, on average, you have less than 15 minutes to seek shelter from a violent thunderstorm like this one. Oh, look at this. We have debris. The tornado has touched down. It's time to seek shelter fast. You want to get into the lowest level of your house with the least number of windows possible. Wind speeds in a tornado can reach over 200 miles per hour, and the debris flying through the air at fast speeds is what leads to most tornado fatalities. If you're in a car or a mobile home, you need to get out and seek sturdy shelter or lie in a ditch. Tornadoes are capable of hurling cars, trucks, and mobile homes into the air, and debris can be scattered for over 150 miles. In your tornado safe spot, be sure to cover your head or wear a helmet to protect your head from flying debris like we're seeing here. While most tornadoes travel less than a mile, some can travel 50 miles, and this one is headed right for us. So we need to head to our safe spot fast. Let's go, guys.
A growing body of research shows climate change is making heat waves hotter and more frequent. The Southeast has been warming about half a degree per decade, with local temperatures increasing by nearly 6 degrees since 1970. The Raleigh-Durham area has 40 more risky heat days than it did in 1970, one of the biggest increases in the nation, according to Climate Central. Heat waves are more dangerous when combined with humidity, and heat waves are expected to quadruple in North Carolina by 2050. It's even hotter on what's called urban heat islands, areas in cities with dense concentrations of pavement, buildings, and other surfaces that can absorb and retain heat. This effect increases health risks, energy costs, and air pollution levels. Urban heat islands also tend to be more common in low-income neighborhoods. Some areas in the city of Raleigh are 19 degrees hotter than other nearby rural areas with natural ground cover. And on average, city summers are about 2 degrees hotter than in rural areas. And if that isn't enough to make you sweat, consider the health impacts. As temperatures rise, so do heat-related illnesses, hospital visits, and deaths. More than 80% of Americans live in cities, putting hundreds of millions of people at higher risk during the hottest parts of the year. Heat is the #1 weather-related killer in the U.S., and the hottest days, particularly days over 90 degrees, are associated with dangerous ozone pollution levels that can trigger asthma attacks, heart attacks, and other serious health impacts. Young children and senior citizens living in poverty are especially vulnerable. A population of more than 300,000 people in North Carolina, and an above-average number among the lower 48 states. In the coming decades, it's likely more areas will be affected by extreme heat more often, more severely, and for longer periods of time.
Florence dumped 8 trillion gallons of water across North Carolina, and this happened just 2 years after Matthew brought devastating rainfall to the same area. Both Hurricane Matthew and Florence brought record flooding to North Carolina's rivers. Now, during Matthew, the Lumber River at Lumberton crested at 28 feet, the highest in history. That is until Florence just 2 years later, when it crested at 29 feet and actually covered parts of I-95. The Neuse River at Goldsboro also crested to record levels during Matthew, cresting at 29.74 feet. Just 2 years later, during Florence, it reached the third highest crest on record, 27.6 feet. The Cape Fear River at Fayetteville also reached very high levels, topping out at the sixth highest crest on record during Matthew that was at 58.94 feet. And 2 years later, the fifth highest crest on record during Florence, 61.58 feet. Rivers remained above flood stage for weeks after the storms passed.
When tropical systems move inland, we all know there's a threat for wind damage and flooding. But more than half of landfalling hurricanes also produce at least one tornado. In 2020, Isaias spawned 12 tornadoes in North Carolina. The strongest was in EF3 in Bertie County that killed 2 people. So why does this happen? When a hurricane's outer rain bands move onshore, the friction from the land will cause the winds near the ground to slow down. But the winds just above the ground continue to remain quite strong. This is what we call wind shear, the change in wind speed and direction as you go up. With wind shear, thunderstorms will begin to rotate and tornadoes can form. Keep in mind that sometimes the outer rain bands are hundreds of miles away from the center of the storm, so tornadoes are possible even when the center of circulation is still well offshore. Storms that form in the Gulf of Mexico can also bring tornadoes to North Carolina. As the system moves northeast, areas east of the center have the potential to produce tornadoes. Tornadoes within tropical systems are particularly dangerous because they tend to form really fast, sometimes in 1 to 2 minutes, and they move fast too, sometimes at 50 to 60 miles per hour. Fortunately, they're usually short-lived, often lasting just a couple of minutes. The fast development and movement make them harder to track on radar. So anytime we have a tropical system nearby, be ready for tornadoes too. Some years, the United States sees 10% of its annual tornadoes in just one tropical system. Active hurricane seasons are becoming a normal occurrence. Last year marked 6 seasons in a row with above normal activity. And new research shows that human-induced climate change means tropical systems produce more rain. Our global average temperature has climbed 1.8 degrees since the 1700s. But what does that actually mean when it comes to tropical systems? A warmer atmosphere holds more water vapor, and a temperature rise of 1.8 degrees means the atmosphere can hold 7% more water. As a result, tropical systems are dumping more and more rain. Researchers attributed excessive rainfall from hurricanes like Florence, Dorian, Harvey, and Maria to climate change. Hurricane Harvey dumped 60 inches of rain over Houston, and Hurricane Maria left parts of Puerto Rico with 41 inches of rain. These numbers show that climate change is not a future problem. It's happening right now. For simple ideas on how you can make changes to help, go to WRAL.com and search Climate in Crisis.